Ontario is spending millions to remind Americans of their friendship with the province. The Ford government has rolled out a 60-second ad that will run during primetime hours on Fox News and during NFL games. Premier Doug Ford says it's about showing that Canada and the U.S. are stronger together.
More workers, more trade, more prosperity, more security. For generations, this ally to the north has been here. And for generations more, we'll still be here, right by your side.
Its rollout comes as Canada pushes back against a threat from President-elect Donald Trump to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian and Mexican imports, something Trump says he'll do on his first day in office unless both countries clamp down on drugs and illegal immigration. David Paterson is Ontario's representative in Washington, D.C., and he joins me now. David Paterson, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here today.
David, yes, thank you.
So the Premier's in us an ad campaign. I wonder if you can give us a sense of just how frequently and how aggressively this ad campaign to remind Americans of the importance of the Ontario relationship will be playing.
Yeah, it'll be a significant placement here, Monday Night Football, and also on Fox and CNN and a variety of other places. So it'll be a very significant ad campaign, and really gets back to the core roots of how we're joined at the hip with our American cousins on so many areas, going back to our military adventures together and having each other's back. So we're really looking forward to seeing the reactions to that. But I think they'll be very helpful.
Monday Night Football is not a cheap ad buyer. Are you doing that nationally, or are you doing select regional markets with this campaign?
Yeah, it'll be both. It'll start here in Washington, as you can imagine, and it'll also play in different select markets. I'm not the ad buyer expert on these things, but I think that it gives you a good idea of who the target audience is.
Is West Palm Beach one of those markets? Are you going to be putting things right into the Mar-a-Lago circulation?
Might well be. We'll see when the Dolphins play.
All right. Well, I just wonder. I mean, this is the talk of the country really for the past week. What is the talk in Washington? Who have you been speaking with about this 25% tariff threat to try to mitigate against this economic risk we're all facing?
Sure. Well, I started in this role just about a year ago, and as we looked at sort of the challenges in terms of trade agreement renewals and the like, we really have focused on Republicans for the last year. I was at the RNC. I'm up on Capitol Hill almost every day in meetings with senators and with House of Representatives. A lot of them come back, so that's good. A lot of the committee chairs that are there. Of course, the new administration's not in place yet. And I was actually thrilled to see that the Prime Minister was at Mar-a-Lago having dinner with the incoming president. It's so important that we do that and work together to make sure Americans understand how important it is we work together.
I mean, the economic arguments against these tariffs is an easy one to make, but I don't know if it's the argument that's going to carry the day, right? Because these tariffs, unlike the old NAFTA renegotiation, it's not about trade imbalance necessarily. It's about human flows and fentanyl flows. So when you're talking to people on Capitol Hill, what are they saying to you about the border? Do they share Trump's concerns, or do they know this is kind of a little bit overstated, perhaps?
Oh, sure. No, I from some of the first meetings that I did, some together with the ambassador for Canada, some on our own, fentanyl would come up. I mean, fentanyl is something that we have to take on ourselves, and we should take on ourselves. And so we have a mutual interest in doing that. It just makes sense to do it. Ontario is going to step up. We're hiring all kinds of new law enforcement people, and we can add that to some of our federal response. But the key thing is that we have to have action and not excuses. And so we've been nudging our federal friends for a good long time to be able to take on a suite of issues, not just the border, but defense spending, and get rid of the DST, and a number of things that we've been hearing for a year from Republicans and Democrats, frankly. And I'm really thrilled to see that the federal government's now shifting into action mode. And in some ways, perhaps the incoming president did a favor in terms of giving us 2 months' notice to get ahead on this stuff. And so I think getting onto the front foot and being able to deal seriously with these issues and to do it together with the provinces, that's the right way to go.
Okay, so when Wab Kinew, the Premier of Manitoba, was on the show last week, he made the point, as he did at the First Ministers meeting on Wednesday, that Canada can't argue its way out of this. It needs to take action to assuage the incoming president that Canada is a serious partner on the border. Is that your view of it, talking to lawmakers on Parliament Hill, or sorry, on Capitol Hill? Like, the fact that fentanyl from Canada to the U.S. is a teeny tiny amount of the drug problem, I mean, does that matter? Or do you really just need to demonstrate a better border security, whether it's warranted or not?
Well, I mean, of course it matters. Anybody that has any personal experience in a family or whatever with fentanyl knows that it matters, and that we need to take that on. And it's in our mutual interest to do that, as well as take on a variety of other things. In my discussions, they're actually very much aligned with sort of how the swim lanes of responsibility take place in Canada. We in Ontario, we own the critical minerals that are going to be needed for military purposes by the United States and by the auto sector. We also have the leading North American small modular nuclear reactor work taking place at Darlington. That'll be essential if the United States is going to grow its artificial intelligence business. And so we have what is needed, and those are our areas of responsibility. So my conversations are relatively easy. It's the federal ones that are harder because they have to deal with defense, they have to deal with the border, they have to deal with fentanyl. And so part of our job is to let Americans know that we have the right answers on those things. That's part of why the advertising, because this should not be an argue against. This should be an argue with, and make sure that we get the right solutions. And there's no question that we need each other to grow the economy and be successful. And I think the provinces will play a really important role in that.
Right. No, and with my question, I certainly wasn't trying to downplay the impacts of fentanyl. Just the volumes are so small compared to what you're seeing coming from Mexico into the United States, or even produced in the U.S. Domestically. Yeah. But I guess just to go back, you said you were encouraged to the fact that the Prime Minister, within a week of the threat, was at Mar-a-Lago having dinner. He brought his border minister, public safety minister, Dominic LeBlanc, with him. I mean, what does that tell you about the ability of the government, I guess, to head this off by the 20th of January, because that's a bit of a doomsday clock for the North American economy?
Yeah, and I think that, President Trump has provided that warning to the world. He's talked about 10% to 20% tariffs, not just for Canada or just for Canada and Mexico, but for the whole world. So it's a wake-up call from the American president to say, take us seriously and let's solve problems. And so, hey, we've got some problems at first that we can take on that are in our mutual benefit to solve. So let's do that. Right. And then let's also deal with defense, and let's deal with a bunch of other things that we can do to show how important our joint economies are. And then let's build the economy together. We have what is needed in that. We have a fully integrated auto sector, a food sector, all of these things we can do and must do together. And so to me, that's a really great development that we saw the Prime Minister and Dominic LeBlanc down there. We think very highly of Dominic LeBlanc. I think he's a great person to start off that conversation. But we need, as my father used to say to me, we need action, not excuses. And so I think that's our message right now.
So in terms of action, what's been put on the table by the government so far, the Canadian government publicly, is more drones, more helicopter patrols along the border, maybe the redeployment of RCMP, maybe looking at expanding what the CBSA does, if not buttressing their numbers. Do you think that's going to be enough in terms of meeting I'm asking you to predict what Donald Trump will do, so I apologize for that in advance. But does that feel like enough to you from your conversations to sort of demonstrate to the incoming administration? No?
No, I think that we have to look at the future of the economy together. Right. And if we've been paying attention for the last while, the issues of defense spending and the opportunity that provides for our economy together if we do that properly. We have to take a look at things. Ontario's been calling for the federal government to get rid of the digital service tax for months. And that's something that joins both Republicans and Democrats together, the rare thing that we could do there. So there's a lot of things beyond just fentanyl and the border. I think fentanyl is a good example of something that might justify emergency responses from the American point of view. It's a great place to start because it is an emergency and we should be taking it on. So let's do that. Let's get behind each other in doing it, but let's have a grander vision of the things that we can do together in terms of growing the economy. And if we do that, we can avoid some of the things we hear in Washington of concerns about inflationary impacts and tariffs and the like. So let's get on. Let's upgrade the USMCA and let's make sure that we're ready for the next 20, 30, 40.
Right, and look, and all of those are important issues, but those are medium to long term. I'm talking about just in this sort of 50 days, whatever it is, until the 20th of January. Do you think these moves on the border to deal with the fentanyl and the migration issues Trump specifically tied this tariff threat to, do you think this is enough to maybe get us there?
Well, that'll be up to the president to decide what's enough and whether we live for a longer time with the sword of Damocles above our head. That's okay. We've lived with that. I've lived with that in the auto sector for 20 years in terms of always having to take on issues. That's life in terms of business. But I wouldn't trade places with anybody on the planet in terms of being a partner to the United States. We are so integrated, right, and we can help each other so much. That's that's the ace in the hole. But again, it comes back to action and accountability.
Right. All right. David Paterson, Ontario's representative in Washington, D.C. It's good to have you on the show, sir. Thanks very much.